It's 1949, a small Ohio town pulsing with post-war hope. James was 22, fresh from the war, his hands calloused from fixing engines at his father's auto shop. He had a spark in his eyes, a dreamer's heart, and a knack for making people laugh. Evelyn, 20, was a seamstress with a quiet strength, her nose often buried in books, dreaming of a life beyond their sleepy town. She was cautious, shaped by wartime loss, but her smile could light up the darkest room. In 1949, their town clung to tradition. Love was supposed to follow rules, marry up, settle down. But when James and Evelyn met, rules didn't stand a chance. Their connection was electric, a spark that promised forever. Could it last? That night at the dance hall, the air was thick with possibility. Glenn Miller's band played a lively tune, and James, heart pounding, crossed the room to Evelyn. "Care to dance?" he asked, his voice betraying a nervous edge. Evelyn hesitated, her hazel eyes scanning him, but something in his grin made her say yes. They swayed to the music, her shy laughter mixing with his playful banter. He talked about fixing cars, she shared her love for poetry. They discovered a shared passion for stargazing, dreaming under the open sky. As the night ended, James led her outside to a towering oak. With his pocketknife, he carved their initials, J&E, into the bark, whispering, "This is just the beginning, Evie." Have you ever had a moment where you just knew someone was your forever? Their courtship was a whirlwind of stolen moments. They shared picnics by the river, James tossing pebbles to make Evelyn laugh. They snuck into the drive-in theater, giggling like kids as they kissed in the shadows. Evelyn was cautious, wary that James' charm might fade, but he proved her wrong. He fixed her rickety bicycle, left handwritten notes tucked in her books, and showed up with wildflowers just because. Her parents, though, weren't impressed. They wanted her to marry a banker's son, someone with status. James, just a mechanic, felt the sting of their disapproval. He worked extra hours, determined to show he was enough. One snowy Christmas Eve, under that same oak tree, he knelt in the snow, a simple ring in his trembling hand. "Evelyn, you're my home. Will you marry me?" Tears froze on her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes, James. Always." But could their love survive the storms waiting just around the corner? In 1950, they married in a small church, surrounded by a few loyal friends and skeptical family. Evelyn's white dress, sewn by her own hands, glowed in the candlelight. James couldn't stop smiling, even when her father's cold stare burned into him. Their joy was unshakable, but reality hit hard. The auto shop barely broke even, and Evelyn took extra sewing jobs, her fingers pricked raw by midnight. They lived in a cramped apartment, the walls thin, the winters brutal. Yet they were a team. James brought her tea as she sewed, telling silly stories to keep her laughing. She mended his work shirts, stitching love into every seam. Money was tight, but their hearts were full. Then came a crossroads, a job offer in Chicago, promising better pay but tearing them from Evelyn's aging mother. They argued, Evelyn torn between duty and dreams, James desperate to provide. In the end, they stayed, choosing family over ambition. That night, in their tiny kitchen, they danced to a crackling radio, laughing through the uncertainty. What would you sacrifice for the one you love? The 1950s rolled into the 1960s, and their life bloomed. They bought a modest house, its porch creaking but theirs. 2 children, Lily and Thomas, filled it with chaos and joy. James taught Lily to ride a bike, cheering as she wobbled down the street. Evelyn read bedtime stories, her voice weaving magic for Thomas. Sunday picnics became tradition, the kids chasing fireflies while James stole kisses from Evelyn. But life wasn't all sunshine. In 1955, Evelyn caught pneumonia, her fever spiking, her breath shallow. James never left her side, reading her favorite books aloud, his voice steady even as fear clawed at him. "Stay with me, Evie," he'd whisper. Her recovery felt like a miracle, their bond stronger for it. James poured himself into the auto shop, earning the town's respect, proving the doubters wrong. Evelyn started a small sewing business, her dresses worn at every town dance. They celebrated each milestone together, hand in hand. In 1960, they stood under their oak tree, its carved initials weathered but proud, just like their love. But life had more tests in store, some that would push their vows to the limit. As the 1960s faded, James and Evelyn thought they'd faced their hardest days. They'd built a life, raised a family, and kept their spark alive. But love, like that old oak, would face storms they couldn't predict. Could their bond withstand loss, distance, and the weight of time itself? Stay tuned for part 2, where James and Evelyn's love faces its greatest trials, and proves why it's lasted 76 years. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and join us to see if their love can truly conquer all. The 1960s gave way to the 1970s, and James and Evelyn's love, like their weathered oak tree, stood firm against time's relentless march. Their small Ohio town buzzed with change, new cars, new music, new dreams, but their bond remained a constant, a lighthouse in the shifting tides. Now in their 40s, they were no longer the starry-eyed kids from the dance hall. James' hands, still calloused, now bore scars from years at the auto shop. Evelyn's hazel eyes held a quiet wisdom, her fingers nimble from decades of sewing. Their kids, Lily and Thomas, were growing fast, teenagers with big ideas and bigger attitudes. The modest house they bought creaked with memories, its porch a stage for late-night talks and stolen kisses. But life, as it always does, had storms brewing, ready to test the vows carved into their hearts 76 years ago. Could their love endure the weight of loss, the pull of distance, and the ache of time? The first blow came in 1972. James' father, the gruff man who'd built the auto shop, passed suddenly from a heart attack. The shop, James' pride, became his burden overnight. Bills piled up, and the town's new mechanic chains threatened to steal customers. James worked late, his shoulders hunched under the strain, his usual grin fading. Evelyn saw the toll it took. One night, as rain battered their roof, she found him in the garage, staring at a broken engine. "It's not just the shop, Evie," he admitted, voice raw. "I'm scared I'm letting you down." She took his hand, her touch steady. "You're my home, James. We'll fix this together." She started managing the shop's books, her sharp mind catching errors James missed. They offered discounts to loyal customers, and slowly, the shop held its ground. Their teamwork was a quiet miracle, but Evelyn's own battle loomed. In 1974, Evelyn's mother, frail and stubborn, fell ill. Cancer, the doctor said, spreading fast. Evelyn, ever the dutiful daughter, spent days at her mother's bedside, reading poetry as her mother's breaths grew weaker. James took on extra shifts to cover medical bills, coming home exhausted but never complaining. When her mother passed, Evelyn's grief was a silent weight. She stopped sewing, her hands idle for the first time in years. James, sensing her drift, brought her to their oak tree one crisp autumn evening. He pressed a small notebook into her hands, a collection of poems he'd written, clumsy but heartfelt, about their life together. "You're still my light, Evie," he said. She cried, not from sadness but from the warmth of his love pulling her back. They stood there, under the carved initials, promising to face every storm side by side. But life wasn't done testing them. By the late 1970s, Lily and Thomas were carving their own paths. Lily, now 20, dreamed of studying art in New York, her sketches vivid with ambition. Thomas, 18, wanted to join the Navy, chasing adventure beyond their sleepy town. James and Evelyn cheered their dreams but felt the ache of an emptying nest. When Lily got accepted to a prestigious art school, the tuition was a gut punch. James sold his father's old truck, a relic he'd cherished, to help pay for it. Evelyn sewed late into the night, her dresses fetching higher prices as her reputation grew. The day Lily left, Evelyn hugged her tight, whispering, "Paint the world, my girl." Thomas enlisted soon after, his letters home full of bravado but laced with homesickness. The house felt too big, too quiet. One night, James pulled Evelyn close, their old radio crackling with a familiar tune. "Dance with me, Evie," he said, and they swayed in the kitchen, laughing through the emptiness. Could they hold on as their world shifted? The 1980s brought new challenges. The auto shop faced a fire in 1982, a stray spark from a welder's torch that gutted half the building. Insurance covered some, but not enough. James, now 55, felt the weight of starting over. Evelyn, ever his anchor, rallied the town. She organized a fundraiser, her charm convincing even the stingiest locals to donate. The shop was rebuilt, stronger, with a new sign, JNE Auto. The town saw James not just as a mechanic but as a pillar, and Evelyn as his equal in grit. Their love, though, faced a quieter threat, routine. Years of hard work had dulled their spark. James noticed Evelyn's smiles were rarer, her eyes distant. He planned a surprise, a weekend at a cabin by the lake where they'd picnicked as kids. There, under a starlit sky, they talked like they hadn't in years, sharing fears and dreams. "I'd choose you every time, Evie," James said, his voice thick. She kissed him, her heart reignited. But could they keep that fire burning? The 1990s tested their resilience. James' health faltered, a heart scare in 1995 that landed him in the hospital. Evelyn, now 66, sat by his bed, reading to him as he'd done for her decades ago. "Don't you dare leave me, James," she teased, her voice steady despite her fear. He recovered, but the scare changed them. They started traveling, modest trips to places they'd dreamed of, Niagara Falls, the Grand Canyon. They laughed like newlyweds, James stealing fries from Evelyn's plate, her swatting his hand playfully. Their kids, now settled with families of their own, visited often. Lily's paintings hung in their home, Thomas's Navy medals on display. Grandkids brought new chaos, their laughter echoing in the house. One summer, under their oak tree, James and Evelyn renewed their vows, their hands wrinkled but clasped tight. The carved initials, now deep grooves, stood as proof of their enduring love. But time had one final test, the 2000s rolled in, and age began to creep into their bones. James' arthritis made wrench turning harder, Evelyn's eyes strained over her needlework. Yet they adapted. James hired a young mechanic, passing on his knowledge. Evelyn taught her granddaughters to sew, her stories weaving love into every stitch. In 2010, a flood hit their town, damaging their home. Neighbors rallied, just as they had for the shop years ago, a testament to the couple's impact. James and Evelyn rebuilt, their love a quiet force. By 2025, their 76th anniversary approached. Now 98 and 96, they moved slower, their hair silver, but their eyes still sparkled for each other. On a warm spring day, they sat on their porch, hands entwined. James whispered, "We did it, Evie. We made it eternal." She smiled, her voice soft. "Always, James." Their oak tree, weathered but standing, bore their initials like a badge of triumph.